What's up guys, Dr. Glutes here, Simon D, Ginger McCheekklapper, and maybe even Johnny String Beans at the moment, but I'm on a bulk, I'm gonna be massive. Squats. These are the GOAT for glutes. I will put them at the same level as a BBL. The only difference is, for this one, you actually need a brain. The issue is, a lot of people don't feel them in their glutes, and you might be one of them. Therefore, I'm going to explain you 5 big no-nos that might be keeping your glutes from the loads they deserve. I'm gonna give your glutes the load they deserve. Number 1 is the wrong bar placement. And I say wrong, but there is actually not a wrong bar placement. It's less for glutes and more for quads. Allow me to elaborate T, fancy word. The point of a squat is to keep the weight above the middle of my foot. That gives the most stability, and that way I can also put out the most power without falling over or falling backwards. Now, this is a Smith machine, so falling backwards or falling forward is gonna be hard, but still, we wanna press off of the full foot. Think of it as a tripod. You want the heel, your small toe, and your big toe, and you want the middle of that, which is basically the middle of my shoelaces. There's also 2 main joints where I'm gonna determine if I'm gonna feel the squat more in my quads or in my glutes. If I get more knee bent, I'm training more quads. And if I get more hip bent, I'm training more glutes. If I lay the bar in my neck on my traps, then I will be forced to stay more upright as I go down. I can't push my hips back because that will hurt my neck. So if I stay more upright as I go down, I get less hip flexion, therefore my knees have to go forward. And if my knees are going forward, I'm training more quads. Now, if I lay the bar on my mid traps, which are basically the rear side of my shoulders, I'm forced to push my hips back to keep the bar above the middle of my foot. You know, if I don't, you can see how that is gonna work out. I have to push my hips back to 1, keep the bar on my back, and 2, keep the weight above the middle of my foot. Now, this gives more hip flexion as I go down, and that will bias the glutes more. Number 2 mistake might be the wrong feet placement. Now, this is also influenced by where the load is placed. Sometimes you misplace a load and you need a plan B or a Hail Mary. So if I know I'm gonna train quads and I lay the bar in my neck, I'm placing my feet closer to the bar. Because now if I go down, it makes it easier to force my knees over my toes, and a bigger stretch means more quad growth. Now, if I wanna train glutes, I basically want as little knee bend as possible. Therefore, I wanna place my feet 1 step forward at shoulder width apart and slightly turned outwards. This, combined with pushing the hips back, gives me as little knee bend as possible and puts the big load on the glutes. And I'm guessing you're very familiar with putting big loads on. Number 3 is not keeping the upper body erect, which if I saw a girl like you, I also wouldn't be erect. What? Now, as I said, we're only moving at the hips and the knees. So the upper body needs to be as rigid as possible. Because also, because when we're under a heavy load and we start to round the back, well, that might put you in a wheelchair. Maybe not that dramatic, but it will hurt you. So I keep my upper body straight with my 2. My script. Cake City cues. Number 1 is I'm squeezing a passion fruit underneath my arms. This is to retract the shoulder blades and flex the lats. That will keep the upper back in place. Squeeze! And number 2 is I brace my core by breathing into my stomach and imagining that I have to sneeze. Number 4 is letting the knees cave in. Should we let them cave like you cave after the smallest inconvenience in your life? Probably not. Now, as you may have noticed, your knees can only bend one way. And if you're trying to bend them to different sides, it might hurt you. So we don't want to do that. Therefore, when I lower down, I'm pushing my knees outwards at all times. I make sure that they follow over my toes. Now, this is also a great way to roll. Now you might also be asking, why do I set my feet so far apart? If I place my feet like this and I'm going lower, I'm rounding my lower back, because something has to bend if you want to go lower. And we can be twerking when we're lowering down. Because remember, bending the lower back under load might put you in a wheelchair, just like Tyrone's put you in a... So I sit my feet at shoulder width apart and slightly turned outwards. And to make this even better for glutes, I set my feet even wider than shoulder width apart and turned more outwards. Because now I have to push my knees out even more, and that external rotation on the hips gives more glute growth. Sumo squats are goated. And number 5, not going deep enough. We've all been there as men. Not me, and it's not men's fault. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it how it is. Now, how low should we sink? As much as you after being disrespected 10 times and still telling yourself you found your person? Not that deep. Now, as I said, I want all the bend at the hips. And how much you can bend depends on your mobility and how many times you got your legs placed in your... For me, I only had my legs placed in my 4 times. Don't tell my mom. So I bend my knees, push my hips back, and I lower down to knee height. This will give me my most optimal glute stretch, because if I go lower, I'm just getting hip tilt, and hip tilt basically means that I do not have enough mobility in my hips to go deeper. Therefore, if I want to go deeper, something else has to bend, and that something else is my lower back. And after Tyrone put me in a wheelchair, I don't want to be in a wheelchair again. And as we all know, the only ones that bend their lower back during heavy loads are on, and I am not a yet. So now let me guide you through a full few reps. I grip the bar as close as possible to create a shelf on my upper back, lay the bar on my rear delts or mid traps, set my feet one step forward, wider than shoulder width apart, and slightly turned outwards. I keep my upper body straight with the 2 Cake City cues, and now I push my hips back, bend my knees, and I slowly lower my glutes down to knee height. Now from here, I thrust my hips back forward and squeeze my glutes, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. Subscribe, or I'm telling your wife about us. Sit on the flower and you like Christmas.